Well, welcome. Our April meeting is also the annual meeting of the Historical Society, and so there is a little business that we need to conduct before we have our program. As hopefully all of you got either by mail or email, we have worked on trying to make the bylaws flow a little cleaner and not have so many things that we need to do that may not be necessary. So we have sent to all of you what the Board of Directors proposed as changes. And so our first order of business is to deal with that. And that said, the chair will entertain a motion regarding the bylaws.
I'll move to accept the bylaws as amended.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor to accept the bylaws as amended. Mac made that motion. Is there a second? Okay, Kelly Gonzalez is seconding. It's now time for discussion. Does anyone have any questions or comments that we need to make about this? Please feel free. All right, someone want to call for the vote?
Call for the question.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then the secretary can record that the motion passed. The other item of business is the election of officers and directors. And the nominating committee, which is Dolores, and I don't know who else you had, Dolores, but anyway, would you report to us on your slate that you came up with?
Okay, the present officers and directors have all agreed to serve another term.
Okay, in case you didn't hear, she said the present officers and directors have all agreed to serve another term. So again, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move, is that a slate?
That's a slate.
I'll move that the slate be accepted and voted on.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor that the slate be accepted and voted on.
I second.
We got a hand up back there.
A motion to accept it and vote on.
Okay, so, okay, I need a second.
I second it.
Okay,
Who was that? Who seconded it?
we have two people seconded it.
Jay Stillman?
Jay, I think, beat, so Jay did, okay. Is there any discussion?
Any nominations for?
Or any nominations from the floor? Okay, someone needs to call for the vote then.
All in favor of the slate?
Okay, all in favor of the slate of officers, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then congratulations to all of us. We get to serve another term. Okay, Siobhan, I was going to talk, first of all, is there any other business to be brought before the annual meeting before I close the meeting and go to the program?
Yes.
You have business? Okay, I'll pass the mic to Siobhan.
Well, I think I don't know, can you hear me? I feel like I don't know if I can hear me. Well, I think it's important that we have a slate and that it's voted on. It's not nearly so fun as to having a little bit more of an acknowledgement than that. But before we start on the slate, we are in the middle of a super bloom, and kind of the Historical Society is back in a super bloom as well. And I would like to acknowledge Mac. So Mac, I'd like for you to come up, please. And yeah, and you've got to come up here because I hear this is the spot to stand.
Okay.
And Mac is a Lupin. And he's a little bit taller than most other members. And if you know anything about lupins, they're covered with short, rough hairs. And the purple lupin is kind of like Mac. It also has a surprise, and if you get really close to it and sniff it, it smells like grape soda. And so, Mac is our special lupin, and so we just love you, Mac.
Okay.
So,
All right, I get to show you all that. That's me. Thank you, dear.
And then our next flower in our super bloom of a slate is Terry Lansdale. Terry,
Landsidle.
Landsidle. Terry, where are you?
He's there.
Now, Terry being a bit of a guy, we will acknowledge as a guy, there is a flower called the scorpion weed, which sounds a little bit macho, but for those of you that have been out at our barbecues, this is called the lacy scorpion weed, which matches Terry's apron during the barbecue. So if you are intrigued, please come to the September meeting and Terry will be properly adorned again.
Thank you.
And then I am on the membership at board, membership at large, and a part of the California Golden Fields, or gold fields, is that they just kind of take over and they propagate. And that's what we're hoping that we're going to do with the society, that we're going to really get a chance to network and be out and about with everybody. And to be horribly politically incorrect, just plain bad. Judy, can you come up? Yeah. And
Why do I get politically incorrect?
No.
well, I'll have you notice something in between Gretchen and Judy, just in case you didn't notice. Well, the mustard flowers are also part of our wildflowers, and these are the short pod mustard flowers. So, Judy, thank you for being a part of our garden.
Well, thank you.
And then Kelly.
This ought to be interesting.
Yeah, I've now made everybody officially flinch. Within the garden, you want to have, Kelly is in charge of our finances. And so this is a pinpoint clover, and she has got pinpoint accuracy. And so we just appreciate your dedication to us.
Thank you, and purple is my favorite color.
Well, there you go. And then Janet. Janet is our secretary. She does a beautiful, beautiful job with the newsletter. And so she is our exerted Indian paintbrush. And so for those of you that also know Janet, the nickname for this is the Purple Owl's Clover. And if you want to get a hold of Janet, 2 a.m. is kind of her prime time. She gets really good Wi-Fi reception and everything else. So thank you, Janet.
Thank you. That's pretty.
And then the next one in our garden, Dolores. She is the vice president, And a vice president's job is just really, really rare. And so she is our white poppy.
Wow.
And you notice it kind of matches her whole decor there. And so we appreciate all that you do.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the lovely flowers.
Yes. And then, you know, with Gretchen, she of course has to be the poppy of, you know, California. It's the poppy, you know, flower of California.
State flower,
State
yes.
flower. But Gretchen is our community flower. And while the poppy is so representative of so many things, in some ways it's a little bit of a misnomer to Gretchen. The poppy's a little bit finicky. It only opens on sunny days without any wind. Gretchen is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when I grow up, I'm wanting to be just like her.
Thank you, Siobhan.
That is our slate of officers.
Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you, Siobhan. You're always very creative.
Yes.
Siobhan, you usually set the stage for the program, but I'm going to say a few things, if I may, first.
Yes, you need to, because I didn't know Cecil, so.
Yeah. This tape was given to me when I passed it on to Mac. Janet is the one that gave it to me, and the wind noise was so bad that you maybe could understand a word here and there. Most of the tape was totally unintelligible because of the wind noise. And the first thing that Mac did is put the tape, it was the VHS tape, he put it on a DVD. And then he took off the wind noise. Which he did through his computer. He told me not to talk about this, but I'm going to. You know, this was, he had to do it on his computer. He had to download an app, and I don't know what all he did, but he got the wind noise pretty much off, but it also distorted the speaking part of it somewhat. And so then he thought, well, you can understand it a whole lot better, but he said, let's closed caption it. So he took the tape, only it's really now on DVD, and every frame where Cecil was talking, he had to isolate that piece. And then he had to listen to what Cecil said, and he had to do it over and over and over again. He even had earphones he used. And then he had to write down what he heard Cecil say, and then he had to hand type it on the frame. I think he would spend an hour on 3 minutes of dialogue. He has hundreds of hours in this DVD that you're about to see. It is not 100% perfect, but it is phenomenal compared to what it was. So I hope you all appreciate, you know, the hours that he has put in on this. So I want to officially say thank you, Matt.
We're still on the east side of Rosamond, and when I say east side, I'm talking about the east side of the railroad track. And the spot that we're starting on now, I believe, used to be the Ecker Alfalfa Ranch. And you can see the standpipe in the distance there, and the well, and over to My right or your left is the little reservoir that they had there. It's pretty well beat down now. And this ranch was here in the 30s. And to my knowledge, the Eckers were the only ones that had this, but you know, later could be sold to somebody else. And they maybe raised alfalfa too. Behind the camera, and all this area back in there, where all this mini market that is now, that also was alfalfa ranches. And they extended down quite a little ways and then up through this area right through here. Okay, this is, we're looking at now what used to be alfalfa ranches. The church in the background over there, you can see the steeple from. That was part of the Peony Ranch, I believe. And there were three or four ranches down through this area here where all this housing is right now. So it was a nice little area. And these type of ranches here just raised alfalfa, except for the one down by the railroad track. In later years, they also raised hogs. A lot of traffic noise today. We are now east of the railroad tracks, as you can see, looking at the back side of the fast strip service station and also over where the skillet is. Right behind me, where those places were, used to be the train depot, located in that area. And as you can see over in this direction, where it says used cars, that used to be the Midget Cafe, and the other half of it was the barber shop. And that was back in the 30s. And in the background you can see the steeple of the church. That was called the Wayside Church, and it was built out of adobe, and it's pretty much the same as it was before. We'll take a close-up of that later on. As we move on down, you can see where that yellow sign is. It's called the Richfield Station. I don't remember gas pumps being there, but I guess there was at some time or another. Anyways, it was usually a cafe and a saloon. And as you pan down further, the big white building you see there where that truck is parked, that was the grocery store that the Tropical Mine built for the people of Rosamond. And it was about a third of that size, and it used to face out to the front, out toward the highway, and it's been built onto about 3 or 4 different times. A little further down, you can see the place that's called my place now was the building that Ezra Hamilton built. It was a brick building, and it was, when I was a kid here, it was the Juanita's Club. Rosamond took good care of their community members. We had the little midget cafe that would hold about 2 people. Had a barber shop. We had a church. We had a little grocery store. But the most important thing is we had 3 big saloons that would accommodate at least 100 people. What more could you ask for in life? This big white building right here you see just across the tracks was put in probably in the 60s, maybe late 50s. And it was a potato packing shed. And I think the name of the ranch was Snyder's. And they had a big potato fields west of Willow Springs on Willow Springs Road or Wilson Boulevard. And they bring the potatoes in here to be sorted and packed and put on the freight train. Then later years, the sugar beets. You raised a lot of sugar beets here in the valley, and they put their packing station there, and that's what they do, the same thing. Although I don't think they use the building that much, but that's the area that they harvested their sugar beets to get them on the freight trains. There'd be car after car, maybe 100 cars of sugar beets being loaded. Clear down beyond that, you can see some green trees down there, and those green trees were the section house for the for the railroad, where one of the railroad workers lived, and took care of the water tank down there and the rest of the depot here in this area. And where those trees are was a water tank to fill locomotives up. Then further down between Avenue D and E was a water tank that was artesian filled up. I think this one down here though the water had to be pumped to fill that one up. Okay, we are now just west of the freeway by about 100 feet. The traffic noise that you hear is the freeway. Behind me is the Rosamond Hill, and what I wanted to show you here was the Rosamond Spring. And believe it or not, in the year 2001, it still has water in it. Now, this spring used to be full here, and it's been understood that the people from the Manly Party stopped here for water. When we pan off to the south, you will see there's a housing project right up to the spring. I'm just wondering how many of these people that live here actually know that there is water in it. Later on, we'll go down to another spring, what we call the Swimming Hole Spring, which is probably about a mile west of here. We're going to go up, take a close picture to show you the water in the spring. Those two cottonwoods have been there since I can remember. They probably have fallen down and regrown again from the roots, but they're still there. There was probably a period of time when somebody called them the Cottonwood Springs.
About what year did you see them?
Pardon?
About what year did you see them first?
Oh, in the probably, when I first remember them, probably about 1936, when I was going to school here. We could see these springs from the schoolyard. Okay, we're getting a little closer now. I'm going to walk up to the spring and find out where the water is. As you can see that this greenery does go up the hill quite a little ways. Well, it's been a long time since I've been up here. But anyways, we'll take a look around. Okay, we're up here now at the spring itself. I'll pull these reeds away so hopefully that you'll be able to see the water that's flowing there. It's not a real lot, but it's quite a bit, especially for being so dry this past year. And you look going up, there's still water all the way down through here. I haven't walked up through the reeds yet to see if there's any bigger ponds, but it's amazing to me that after everything's dried up so bad that this spring's still flowing. This used to be a good place to hunt doves. There's also quail here. We were kids, we'd hunt up here once in a while. Of course, at that time, it was quite a ways from Rosamond. Rosamond was way out there, and this was way in the boonies. But no longer. This house is right next door. We're panning around now to the west and down to the south. And now you can see that actually this house is really close by. And over to the east, there's the freeway, and you can see all the cars going by on the freeway. Where you see that car parked is where we started this first film, so you know how close we were. These are cattails, and you can see they look pretty good. Lots of these rushes have died just down below us and also over to the side, but these that you see green is where the water is still flowing to keep them alive. And it goes up the hill quite a little ways. Can't really see it from here because we're down too low, but it does go up another 50 feet. Okay, this is the ye old swimming hole. At least that's what we always called it. It probably has another name for it, but I'm not sure. The distance spring is about where 30th Street West is today. And as you can see over there in the distance, there's a pretty big size hole, and big enough to swim in. This old fence is always around it, but that didn't seem to bother us. We used to skinny dip in it, but because it was way out in the desert, we could get away with that. As you see now, there's houses all around it, and you probably couldn't get it. You probably couldn't do that today. But it was one of the other springs that fed up along the Rosamond Fault here, and the fault zone is right in this area as it goes on out through way past Willow Springs. This is the same fault that fed Willow Springs and this swimming hole here, and then the Rosamond Springs, which is further east. We've come about a mile since we took the pictures of the, I guess it'd be closer to 3 miles if this is 30th Street. We're going to take another shot up close so you see I don't think there's any water in this spring here, but you can see that the rushes are still green. So probably in the spring, when there's a little more moisture in the ground, that it probably does flow a little bit. We swam in it, I guess it's in, as I did anyway, something to about the late 30s, maybe in the early 40s. And of course, this wasn't something that we did all the time. We just had to be riding horseback. We tie our horse up to one of these posts here, go in and cool off, and then ride on again. So it wasn't something that we come over every day to do, but we did it on occasion. Well, I'm partly down in the swimming hole right now. Came back, but you see the water ran down with about another 50 feet. And there were rushes here then, and we weren't quite as thick as these are right now. So we did have quite a bit of rain to swim in. Probably water right in here right now, except that this is October, so water is probably gone down underground now, but the swimming is still green. But when it's springtime, it might spread itself again. Okay, we are now approximately 6 or 7 miles west of Rosamond. And this valley right in here is what was known as Frederick Springs. It's also called, time to time, Dan Murphy Springs. Because, to my knowledge, a fellow by the name of Dan Murphy, who had the Little Club in Rosamond, he owned this property at that time. Now, there used to be a house down here to the east of me, right next to this road, as you can see. But I don't, without getting out there and walking, just exactly where it was located, but it was to the right of the road. Then if we pan down over across to the left again, you can see a deep wash. There was water in several places along through this wash here. It also cut over on the other side there where there was water come down through here. This is kind of a drainage old creek, and they had the snow on the mountains. Water come down through here. And but it never really didn't seem to affect the spring much, and that always still flowing. And clear on up, as far as we can see the wash, there's always big spots of water flowing, and a lot of cottonwood trees and other type of brush that was green in here. As we get up onto this part here to the right, I come across the old still that Dan Murphy had in the Prohibition days. And it's a remnant of the old still. And I don't know if we can find it today or not, but that might be interesting to look for that. We used to run our cattle all through here. This is really a good watering spot. And it kept the cattle out of get down into Rosamond. And as far as the eye could see at that time, to the northwest, just all open range. So the cattle used to congregate down in here in a long Green Spring. Green Springs now is to our, or Little Springs is to our west. Just about straight off that way. And so this here spring arrangement was part of the Rosamond Spring and the Swimming Hole and the Weather Springs, and then Little Springs, Green Springs, and clear out west of the valley here was Cottonwood Springs. And this used to be nice and green in here. It used to be really nice, good place to be. There weren't many pools in here big enough to swim in, but there was enough water to water a lot of cattle. Water flowed up in here until after the war, probably up until the early 50s. I remember one time coming up here, there was one little place that's still seeping, and I dug it out to see if I could get the water to come back, but it didn't take too long to dry up again. So back up probably about 53, 54, there was still water here then. After that, it dried up. Well, it's really hard to say. Dumpy probably had a couple of them yet. But they were all scattered out around the desert. And I think my brother and I had, one time we had about 30 or 40 head. And then, fortunately had quite a few. There was always cows in and out of here. You could ride up in this area here and find cattle at any given time. This is the remains of what used to be the old still that Dan Murphy had. But you can see where this building used to be and how it was made. And this is the main wash that come down through. There used to be a lot of water in this wash. So that's probably where they got the water for their whiskey. I'm not sure how they made the whiskey. That was before my time. It must have been fun. Clay pit that Ezra Hamilton started back in the 20s. And this is where he first made his discovery that there was gold in this area. All of this that you see in here now was done in the 1980s. But Ezra Hamilton ran a tunnel in, a drift, and found this little vein, and you can trace it clear over to the Tropico. And so that he did find gold in it, so he got most of his riches in. But he did, at the beginning, have a pottery business down in Los Angeles, and this is where he got his clay for his pottery. Okay, this here is the original part of the pit, and if you look up above here, you can see the top of the old drift that he had. goes back into the mountain areas. There used to be the local dump around this area, but the county cleaned it up years ago. But we noticed that further on out, people still dumping trash. We used to come over here on a weekend after school and a lot of shooting at the battles that were here. And I had learned to shoot battles out of the air with a .22 rifle. And my best score was 25 out of 25. But I thought I'd make at least 20 out of 25. So I always thought that was pretty good. There was a time when the whole area in the center just right would just glisten with the glass from both the battles. But we didn't know anything about the environment in those days, but I guess it hadn't hurt the environment too much.
I think some of that information is priceless. There was one mistake he talked about, Ezra Hamilton, and he said in the 20s. It was not the 20s, it was the late 1800s. But his information is just wonderful. And Mac, even though it's not perfect, I think it's amazing because you really couldn't understand you could understand next to nothing in the original one. So if any of you have any questions or comments.
It's just a lot to take in.
It is. It's, I can watch it again and again, and of course Mac probably knows it by heart. But
why I did mention all the water that was out by Willow Springs and out there to St. Paul.
I know, and he did not go out to Willow Springs or go out to Bean Springs. And when I was here in the 60s, there was still a lot more at Willow Springs, and I remember going out to Bean Springs to collect critters.
Yeah.
I never did go to Butler Springs, and I don't know where that is. It's further west, apparently.
Gretchen, I'm thinking there might be another video where he gets out there farther. I expected to see this, where he spent time in Willow Springs and then out farther.
Well,
So it might be another one. Shall we not tell Mac?
We'll have to look. Well, hopefully, if it's when the wind isn't blowing, but having that wind noise, and then even taking out the wind noise, there was residual, as some of you heard, there was background noise, and you just, we don't have $10,000 equipment to take out all this residual background noise.
Something you couldn't understand him at all, and so now you can.
Yeah, you can really understand the majority of it.
Right.
Right. So.
Gretchen, do you know where he was standing in the washed area to the west? Is that to the west of the Lancer Promise area when he was talking about where the Oak Creek came through?
I think it's up. I think it's. She asked about where he's standing, where he calls it Frederick Springs or Dan Murphy Springs. I think it's out by the racetrack.
Behind it.
I think it's behind the racetrack.
That's right behind it.
Yeah.
Lancer Promise is to the east of where he was at.
Yeah. Right.
Gretchen, for those of us that might not be familiar, he was talking about the problem with the water rights. Is that what created the problem with the springs? Was there?
I didn't pick up anything about water rights, no.
Okay, so I misunderstood in there. Okay.
I mean, it's, because the groundwater table has dropped, and that's why we no longer have water coming out. We're using more than...
Why you no longer have alfalfa fields.
And why we no longer have alfalfa fields, that's right.
Well, one of the things that when Jen and I got married...
Race, come stand up here and be loud.
We can teach your voice. I'll use teacher voice. I'll just talk.
Okay.
When Jan and I got married, I got into getting livestock. Started with a stray sheep came in the yard, So I pinned it up and the herd left it. And Susan and I got involved with handling livestock a lot, and he'd tell me a lot of things. And one of the things he said that when he ran cattle on Edwards Air Force Base, the north end up there, he suspected that when the earthquake in Tehachapi was in 1952, that a lot of the springs in this whole area started drying up. And he didn't say that was the cause of it, but after the earthquake, he started seeing less and less water running. And on Edwards, there were 4 or 5 springs out in the north end of the lake bed there where they ran cattle. And he said they never hauled water at all. There was enough water to water them. And after the earthquake, there were only about 2 springs left on Edwards Air Force Base. So that's just from, we would work cattle or we'd do something together, and then he'd stay for dinner with us and he'd talk, and after he'd leave, Janet and I would say, why didn't we have a tape recorder going? It happened several times, but it just watching the video, I thought, wow, I sure miss him, So, anyway.
Anyone else have? Joe?
I've got a few stories I could tell about the water and Dan Murphy, and my dad.
This is Joe Pauley, in case you don't know. And Joe, get over here so you're on.
Get around so we can see you.
Yeah.
My dad was born.
Joe by the blue tape.
At Yearrock in 1912. Of course, before the base and everything was out there.
You want the mic?
And he had a Indian motorcycle, and he knew Dan Murphy was out there at that time. And well, one of the stories about Dan is he had some stills out there around Yearrock, and one time they had I guess there was a bank or something. They kind of dug into the bank and put a still in there, and then they put like a piece of plywood or something over the top of where the bank was, and put some brush and stuff on it. And it was hid out pretty good, but there was a steer that come along one day, and evidently the plywood wasn't too heavy or whatever, and he ended up falling through the plywood into the area where the still was. And so I don't know anything beyond that with that deal, but another time Dan Murphy got an idea that he asked my dad. He said, I've been thinking about maybe starting some kind of a ranch or something in the tourist deal. Could you get me a bunch of desert turtles or tortoises? My dad said, I'll get you as many as you want. And so he did start gathering up a bunch of turtles for Dan, and I guess he was feeding them alfalfa hay, and then whatever his plan was, or maybe he didn't have a very good plan, but I guess they were eating him out of house and home, and he told my dad, he said, that's enough, no more turtles. And then, like Cecil talking about the water, I believe at Sierra Highway, where the railroad track is, I believe it's about Avenue G. There's still, I think, a sign there, like on a tank or a post or something along the railroad, at what they called O-band, and there was an RT spring there that it went 30 feet into the air and filled the tank that they took water on to fill the steamers, the steam engines back, years ago. So some of that, my dad was older than Cecil, so that's one reason that he knew some of those stories. But Cecil Burton and George Webb were two of my favorite guys to talk to about not just where the water and stuff was around this part of the country, but also how it drained and stuff when you had big storms and stuff. But pretty interesting. That was a great film.
Joe, while you're up there, for young folks that have never heard of an artesian well, can you explain what that is?
Well, yeah, there used to be a lot more water in this valley than there is now. And Well, in fact, you know, the lady that was here, actually she was at the Wayside Church that had wrote the biography about Pancho Barnes.
Barbara Schultz.
Yeah, I've read all that book except that last chapter so far. Well, that one ranch that Pancho had, this is before the Happy Bottom Riding Club. In fact, there's pictures like of Raleigh Duntley and some of the old-time cattlemen and stuff. As you're going toward the base on Rosamond Boulevard, before you get to the base, on the left-hand side, there's kind of a hill there to the left that's called Buckhorn Springs. And in that book, it talks about that there was, I think they called it like Buckhorn Flats or something, and she ended up, if you read that book, it'll tell you in there that she had a piece of property down there in LA or Pasadena, wherever that her relatives had those properties that she talks about in that book. And she ended up trading a piece of property down there because they had a ranch there and they raised alfalfa on that ranch. And then later on, Pancho raised, I think she raised pigs, she had horses, she had a dairy, and she actually delivered milk to, you know, I think to the just different people. And some of the milk delivery, I think, went on all the way up until, you know, just before they kicked her off the property. So, but an artesian well is where the water, like this one, I don't know really what causes it to flow, just the pressure or something. But like I said, that one the railroad had put an elevated tank, you know, like 10 or 15, 20 feet up in the air, and there was enough pressure from that water would flow up into that tank, and then they would gravity flow it back down into for water for the steam trains. So.
Yeah, water flows downhill, and when it's coming from the uphill, it's flowing downhill, and there's a head of pressure that builds. Anything else?
You know, all those
Randy,
all the wells he's talking
Randy,
Yeah.
we're going to drag you up to the front too.
Come on down.
Sandra, would you get your dad obeying?
Okay, and you get to talk into the mic.
Do I? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, I moved here in 1955, and I got into rock hounding and stuff because this area is for, you know, all kinds of, and all these water holes they're talking about, I found Indian artifacts. The Indians were using them for years and years, you know, so, you know, it's just, and the water tables dropped, so the springs have dried up, but there's water coming out of the hills all around here, and the Indians were there. I found arrowheads, and you know, they were using, and I found some arrowheads made out of obsidian. There's no obsidian in the valley, so they were trading with Indians from Barstow or something, all that. And I found abalone beads and stuff that they would make, so they were trading with the Indians from the ocean. You know, it didn't just stay right here. It was just amazing. Yeah, it's just, so those water holes have been here for a long time. Everyone he's talked about, I've found artifacts by it. Up on Rosamond Hill, that one he was showing, on the flat land there, the freeway cut through I found all these artifacts, the chips and stuff. When they're making arrowheads, they get all these flakes from the stone. You know? And when you find that, you go, oh, they had a campsite here. Somebody was sitting there making arrowheads. Yeah, it was cool stuff, yeah. In Cecil Burton, I built his house.
You built a lot.
Yeah, I did, yeah. But I built Cecil's house. He told me, he says, when they were running the mine, well, he said when he was a kid, his dad would get him on the buckboard, and Dad put a sidearm on him, and he'd go to Lancaster in a buckboard. And he was telling me in the mine, he says the ore they had, you couldn't see the gold in it. They had to crush it and do a chemical thing. He said, but every once in a while they come across some ore that you see a little piece of gold in it or something. He says he had a burlap bag and he put in that burlap bag and he was hiding it behind some pillars. And he said, when I get the bag full, I'm going to bring it out and cash it in, right? Well, the mine shaft collapsed. He says, if they ever open it up again, I'm going to go back and get it. But that's it.
Thank you, Randy.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add? Siobhan, well, first of all, thank you for coming, but before you leave, Siobhan, talk to us about next meeting, please.
I was telling Gretchen, I am so sorry for things that I wished I'd done. I wished I'd gotten Rhoda to come and talk about the dry cleaners. I wish I'd gotten the people from the feline breeding compound to come and speak. And my goal next month is to get the woman that is running the,
Saddle Up
riding program in Lancaster. And it's a therapeutic horse program. And she is closing in December. And to hear her story is just beyond amazing. So I would encourage you all to come back next month for another really good story.
Okay, well, thank you again for coming, and this has certainly been, I think, enlightening. At least even though I've seen this quite a little bit, I learn something new every time I hear it again. So thank you.